What if the royal baby we all celebrated never actually existed? A woman claiming to be Archie's surrogate has come forward with a bombshell confession. Meghan Markle never gave birth, and the baby shown to the world was a lifelike silicone doll. In her sworn statement, the surrogate reveals she was paid to stay silent, hidden from the public, while the Sussexes staged carefully crafted photo ops. Why would Meghan fake a pregnancy? What else have we been lied to about? In this explosive investigation, we uncover leaked documents, insider testimony, and chilling footage that could shatter the Sussex legacy forever. Stay with us. What you're about to see changes everything. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The story begins not with a headline, not with a news flash, but with a whisper. A quiet murmur passed between corridors in Windsor, carried behind silk-curtained windows and heavy palace doors. It was a whisper that dared not grow into a question, because to question it was to risk everything. To risk the image of a mother, a prince, a family, a monarchy. But today, that whisper roars. What if the baby we thought we knew never truly existed? It sounds like fiction, a far-fetched internet theory, a cruel joke aimed at royalty. But as the months turn to years and more cracks emerge in the carefully curated glass frame of the Sussex fairy tale, the whisper has returned louder and clearer than ever. And this time, it's not coming from Twitter trolls or anonymous Reddit sleuths. It's coming from the woman who says she birthed the child herself. In an exclusive, jaw-dropping revelation that is sending tremors through Buckingham Palace and beyond, a woman claiming to be the biological mother of Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor has broken her silence. Not only does she insist that Meghan Markle was never physically pregnant with Prince Harry's son, but she goes one step further. She alleges that Meghan and Harry used a lifelike silicone reborn doll for multiple public appearances, deceiving the world during staged moments that now form the official history of the British royal family. The surrogate's testimony is deeply unsettling. She paints a picture of calculated deception, of royal staff moving under strict instruction, of doll shipments protected by royal security clearance, of hush payments, contracts, and a media too fearful or too complicit to ask the right questions. And perhaps most disturbingly, she claims that Archie was deliberately hidden from the public not for security, but because the child, for many moments, was never there at all. Let's step back. May 6, 2019. The announcement is brief, polished, and bursting with royal joy. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry have welcomed a baby boy. The nation breathes a collective sigh of relief. The tabloids erupt in jubilant headlines. Royal watchers across the globe raise their glasses to toast a new chapter in the royal bloodline. But behind the press releases, behind the camera lenses, something strange is already happening. Unlike previous royal births, there is no traditional hospital step-out moment. There is no beaming wave from the Lindo wing, no flashbulbs capturing a glowing new mother holding a swaddled newborn. Instead, Meghan and Harry elect for privacy. They skip the formality. They delay the photo. Days later, they release a heavily staged and awkwardly stiff image taken indoors, with Meghan holding what appears to be a newborn in her arms. But almost immediately, speculation begins. The baby doesn't move. Its body is unusually rigid. Its head hangs oddly. Some call it frozen. Others note that not a single facial expression changes in any of the angles provided. Then there are the inconsistencies. A strangely shifting bump during Meghan's pregnancy, captured by media outlets and dissected by online commentators. Dresses that suggest different gestational stages, sometimes within days. The bump that appears flat one moment and pronounced the next. Even seasoned mothers begin to ask questions, not about fashion, but about biology, about physics, about truth. All of this might have been forgotten as the noise of internet gossip. But now, the surrogate has surfaced, and her claims are impossible to ignore. She alleges that she was approached by a high-profile intermediary connected to the Sussex team nearly a year before Archie's birth. She was vetted, medically cleared, and made to sign multiple non-disclosure agreements. She was told that her participation would be completely private, that the child would be well cared for, and that she would be financially compensated at levels far above industry norms. What she wasn't told, however, was that she would never meet the child again, that she would be erased, and that the baby she carried for 9 months would become part of a public charade orchestrated for power, image, and global branding. According to her, after birth, the child was whisked away by private royal security. She never saw him again. She received the agreed-upon funds, but as media frenzy erupted, She watched in disbelief as images appeared of Meghan with what she claims was not a real baby, but a lifelike prop used to sustain the illusion. This wasn't just a case of keeping the surrogate private. According to her testimony, the deception was actively maintained for appearances, using a realistic reborn doll imported from a custom artist in California, packed in a velvet box, delivered with security protocols that rival military operations. It was all staged, she says. They needed the public to believe she had carried him. They needed the photos, the legacy, the illusion. So how did the media not notice? How did seasoned photographers, body language analysts, and royal correspondents all miss the signs? The answer, as many insiders now admit, lies in fear. Fear of losing access. Fear of being branded conspiracy theorists. Fear of lawsuits. Meghan and Harry's legal team had developed a reputation for aggressive action. Journalists who questioned their narratives often found themselves locked out of briefings or served with cease and desist letters. Editors began walking a tightrope, balancing curiosity with caution. And perhaps it worked. For a while. But now, with a voice coming from within, the woman who physically carried and delivered the child, the story can no longer be buried. It demands answers. If what she claims is true, then the implications are staggering. Did the royal family know? Was Buckingham Palace complicit in the deception? Or were they blindsided? What about the official birth certificate? Hospital records? Witnesses? And more importantly, where is Archie now? Has he lived in hiding, shielded from view to protect a lie? Or is there more to this story than even the surrogate herself knows? This story forces us to re-examine not just the Sussex brand, but the idea of modern royalty itself. In an era where image is everything, have we reached the point where perception replaces reality entirely? Was this simply a desperate bid for privacy taken too far? Or was it a deliberate, calculated manipulation of global emotion for personal and financial gain? In the coming chapters, we will dissect the pregnancy timeline. We will analyze public appearances. We will listen to experts in medical ethics, body language, and royal protocol. We will compare the photos side by side. We will trace the money, the silence, the documents, and the staff who were told never to speak. And by the end, you will be left with one conclusion: either the greatest deception in royal history has just unraveled before our eyes, or someone has crafted a lie so convincing that even the world's oldest monarchy couldn't stop it. Are you ready to find out the truth about baby Archie? Because what follows isn't just about one child. It's about the battle between image and integrity, between power and accountability, between silence and the undeniable truth. And it begins now. She had remained in the shadows for nearly 5 years, her story suppressed beneath layers of legal confidentiality and moral conflict. But as her name started to circulate quietly in exclusive circles, first among legal advisors, then among high-profile journalists, there was a growing sense that the wall of silence was beginning to crack. And when she finally spoke, what emerged was not just a bombshell revelation, but an account so detailed, so chilling in its precision, that it left even the most skeptical observers stunned. Her name has not been released to the public, yet. For security reasons and due to ongoing litigation, the woman who claims to be the surrogate mother of Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor has chosen to remain anonymous for now. But her voice, her records, her timeline, and her supporting documents are beginning to paint a damning portrait of deception. According to the surrogate, the initial approach was made discreetly through an international fertility broker based in Los Angeles in early 2018, just weeks after Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's wedding. The broker, known for providing high-profile clients with egg donors and surrogates under complete anonymity, allegedly contacted her with a special request. The client's identity was concealed at first, referred to only as a high-ranking European dignitary, but the conditions raised suspicions. The contract was unlike anything she had ever seen. She was presented with a heavily redacted agreement, including clauses about full forfeiture of future contact, mandatory relocation to a private medical facility during her 3rd trimester, and an addendum that outlined the transfer of guardianship immediately upon birth. Most striking was the demand that the surrogate never publicly acknowledge the existence of the child, not just during pregnancy, but forever. At that point, I didn't know who the clients were, the surrogate told the independent legal review team documenting her statement. But the amount of money they offered was astronomical. It wasn't just compensation, it was a silencing fee. The figure reportedly exceeded $1.2 million, more than 10 times the typical rate for a high-risk private surrogate engagement in the United States. She agreed, under immense pressure. Already a two-time surrogate for elite clients, she saw this as her last job before retiring from what she described as an emotionally taxing line of work. The pregnancy was confirmed through IVF using donor eggs and the client's provided sperm, though she was never allowed to see the biological profiles. The embryo transfer went smoothly, and the first 2 trimesters progressed without issue, until, in her words, things began to get strange. By the start of the 3rd trimester, the broker notified her that she would be moved to a private medical retreat in the English countryside. It was to ensure maximum security and reduce any media attention that might arise from her resemblance to a public figure. She was flown to the United Kingdom via private jet under an assumed name, escorted by a discreet team of security personnel who refused to identify themselves but appeared highly trained and deeply connected. The facility was described as a converted estate, far from urban centers, with no visible signage. Staff communicated in hushed tones, and the surrogate was not allowed to make unsupervised phone calls or access the internet freely. She described feeling like she was being contained rather than cared for, though the medical staff were professional and attentive. Her interactions with Meghan Markle or Prince Harry? 0. They never visited me. Not once. Not even after the birth, she stated. It was all handled through intermediaries. The surrogate gave birth on April 28, 2019, 8 days before the official announcement of Archie's birth. This timeline discrepancy is one of the most glaring inconsistencies in the official narrative, and her medical discharge forms support her version. The child, a healthy male, was immediately removed from the delivery room and taken away by a royal aide. She was not allowed to hold him. In fact, she wasn't even allowed to see him. I asked where he was going, she recounted. One of the nurses told me, he's not yours. That's all you need to know. Shortly after delivery, she was sedated under the pretense of needing rest. When she awoke, she was no longer in the medical suite. She had been moved to a private wing with surveillance. Her belongings had been searched. Her mobile phone was missing. When it was returned 2 days later, it had been wiped clean. I knew then that I had crossed into something much bigger than surrogacy, she said. I was just a piece in a game I didn't understand. She was held at the estate for 5 additional days before being returned to the United States. Her final payment had been wired during her stay. Upon arrival back home, she was contacted by an anonymous legal team that presented her with a reinforced gag order. Breaking it would result in forfeiture of all payments and immediate legal action, potentially international. So why is she speaking now? Because the original contract, as airtight as it seemed, contained one critical flaw. It was based on jurisdictional gray areas between US and UK legal systems. Specifically, it did not address whistleblower protection if information related to public deception or national interest was at stake. Her new legal counsel believes she is within her rights to speak, as long as she does not publicly identify herself or disclose confidential medical data. It's not about the money anymore, she says. It's about the lie. The child I delivered was real, but what they did after, that was not real. Her claims are supported by more than just her word. She has presented time-stamped photos of her pregnancy, communications with the broker, and fragments of the original surrogacy contract. Investigators who reviewed the material confirmed that many details match flight manifests, hospital rosters, and digital footprints tracing her location in the UK during the period in question. The most damning piece of evidence is a series of photos she claims were taken inside the private estate's nursery. One shows a royal aide carrying a velvet-lined box. According to her, that box contained the reborn doll, a hyper-realistic infant figure created by a renowned sculptor in Los Angeles. The artist, who asked not to be named, admitted to producing several custom silicone dolls under confidential commissions during the same period. When shown photos from royal appearances, he hesitated before saying, "That looks like one of mine." The surrogate's testimony has rocked not just royal observers, but insiders within Buckingham Palace itself. While the palace has refused to officially respond, multiple aides have gone on background to confirm that the Duchess of Sussex maintained strict control over all pregnancy-related media access. One former staffer admitted, "We were given a list of banned questions. Pregnancy, labor, birth weight, completely off limits." Was the palace aware of the surrogacy? Were they complicit in concealing it? The surrogate doesn't think so. I believe they were caught in the middle. They didn't want another scandal after Diana. After Andrew. This was damage control from day one. She is currently living under protection, reportedly preparing for a full legal confrontation. Activist groups focused on reproductive rights have begun to rally around her, arguing that her case exposes systemic abuse of surrogate mothers, especially when dealing with powerful clients who feel immune to consequences. Journalists across major networks are racing to corroborate more evidence, and whistleblower hotlines linked to royal service personnel have reportedly seen a surge in anonymous tips. The truth, once a flicker at the edge of tabloid curiosity, is now gaining the weight of fact. And for the surrogate who carried the world's most watched baby, silence is no longer an option. I carried him for 9 months. I felt his heartbeat. I gave birth to him, and they erased me. Now, they'll erase me no more. As the story unfolds and more figures step into the spotlight, the once guarded world of royal protocol is beginning to shake. And the woman at the center of it all, once silenced, now speaking, has cracked open a story that may very well redefine how history remembers the Sussex era. The calendar was supposed to be her greatest alibi. From the moment the pregnancy was officially announced by Kensington Palace on October 15, 2018, just hours before Meghan and Harry embarked on their whirlwind 16-day tour of Australia, New Zealand, Fiji, and Tonga, the world began counting. The timeline was meticulously documented, not just by palace aides, but by an international media industry that scrutinized every public engagement, every baby bump, every wardrobe choice. Yet, in the years that followed, that very timeline became the Achilles heel of Meghan Markle's pregnancy narrative. The more people looked, the more they began to ask, why don't the pieces fit? At first, the announcement seemed timed for maximum emotional impact. Meghan and Harry touched down in Sydney and were greeted with thunderous applause. The news of a royal baby injected their visit with feel-good excitement. Every smiling wave, every speech, every photo op was filtered through the lens of this joyful expectation. But looking back now, this moment wasn't just a celebration, it was the start of an elaborate public relations campaign. A performance that would be examined in slow motion for years to come. Let's begin with the first anomaly, the timing of the announcement itself. Meghan and Harry informed the public on October 15th, but palace insiders confirmed that they had told the Queen and other senior royals at Princess Eugenie's wedding on October 12th. Several guests later complained that the couple had stolen the spotlight from Eugenie. That complaint, initially dismissed as petty, would soon take on new significance. If Meghan was already far enough along to announce her pregnancy, why did she not appear visibly pregnant in photographs taken just days earlier? Indeed, Meghan's figure at Eugenie's wedding showed no discernible bump. She wore a loose-fitting navy blue Givenchy coat, and while some cited clever tailoring, others noticed the absence of even a subtle curve. Professional stylists later remarked that Meghan's outfit at the wedding was unlike her typical choices, strategically voluminous, with accessories meant to draw attention upward, away from the midsection. Was it clever styling or careful misdirection? Fast forward to late October, as the couple continued their royal tour in Australia. Suddenly, the bump appears. Paparazzi captured Meghan cradling a rounded belly in several shots taken in Fiji. But just 3 days earlier in Sydney, wearing a form-fitting dress, her torso appeared flat. The difference was startling. In one photo, she looked to be 5 months pregnant. In another, barely 2. Multiple media outlets began quietly discussing the shifting bump, the most avoided explicit accusations. Editors were wary. Legal teams had already been activated around the couple. During the Fiji appearance, Meghan was ushered out of an event at the Suva Municipal Market earlier than planned. Officially, the palace cited security concerns, but those in attendance described her as visibly agitated and unsteady. One witness told a reporter that she kept adjusting something under her dress, like a strap or a belt. Footage shows Meghan placing her hands awkwardly across her stomach, not in a PR. Then came the New Zealand leg of the tour, where she wore a tight black maternity dress. Here, the bump appeared larger again, yet oddly high on the torso. Obstetricians reviewing the images noted that bump placement and size typically follow a progressive trajectory, not daily variation. In one especially scrutinized clip, Meghan bends down to pet a dog, and the bump seems to fold in on itself, flattening for a moment before popping back into shape. The footage, circulated online by skeptics, was dismissed by royal supporters as a camera trick. But medical professionals disagreed. That's not how abdominal skin or a uterus behaves at that stage, one London-based doctor commented. Even with a compression garment, The movement defies anatomical logic. Another point of contention surfaced at the British Fashion Awards in December 2018. Meghan made a surprise appearance in a stunning one-shoulder black gown. The bump was prominent and round. But what caught attention was how it moved, or didn't. As she walked, the rest of her dress shifted with her body. The bump, however, appeared rigid. It didn't sway. It didn't respond to gravity. And when she reached up to adjust her hair, the bottom hem of her dress caught ever so slightly, lifting just enough to show a visible seam below the belly line. Was it the edge of a support band? Or something else? Skeptics began comparing footage frame by frame. Social media exploded with hashtags like #moonbump and #MegXitBaby. Internet investigators began compiling side-by-side collages of Meghan's belly across months, pointing out inconsistencies not just in size and placement, but in movement and firmness. Some images even appeared to show the bump collapsing when Meghan sat down. One particularly viral clip from a panel discussion in March 2019 showed her laughing while seated, and as she leaned forward, the bump seemed to fold unnaturally. Yet for all the speculation, few in the mainstream media dared to address it. When one Australian morning show commentator broached the subject on live television, her remarks were edited out of the online replay. A British tabloid editor confessed anonymously to a U.S. journalist that they had been told to steer clear of stories questioning Meghan's pregnancy. It was like there was an invisible force field around the subject, the editor said. We could question her fashion choices, her travel schedule, even her politics. But the pregnancy? Off limits. Part of the media hesitancy stemmed from Meghan's narrative of racial and cultural victimization. Any criticism, no matter how neutral or inquisitive, was portrayed as racially motivated. Critics were branded conspiracy theorists or bigots. The Sussex team weaponized public sympathy to silence legitimate questions. But now, with the surrogate speaking out, those questions are rushing back into the spotlight. Let's also examine the odd absence of medical milestones. For a pregnancy of such public interest, there were no details provided on the due date, the expected weight, the chosen hospital, or the attending physician. Contrast this with Kate Middleton's pregnancies, which included detailed updates, scheduled media appearances, and even the naming of the maternity ward in advance. With Meghan, there was only vague information. A spring birth, said the palace. No mention of St. Mary's Hospital or the Lindo Wing, the traditional birthplace of royal heirs. No confirmation of doctors. No published prenatal scans. No birth plan. No indication of any NHS involvement. When asked by reporters about the possibility of a home birth, Meghan remained coy. The palace issued a brief statement that the couple had chosen to keep the birth plans private. But that privacy extended far beyond typical royal discretion. It became a full blackout. Then came the birth announcement on May 6, 2019. But it wasn't an announcement from a hospital. There was no medical confirmation. Instead, it came via Instagram, in a simple text post on the couple's at Sussex royal account. The tone was casual, almost indifferent. It's a boy, it read. The caption thanked supporters for their kindness. There were no photos. No smiling doctors. No swaddled newborn in Harry's arms. Just digital words and a void of evidence. And when they did finally release a photo, the image was stiff and formal. Meghan and Harry stood in St. George's Hall at Windsor Castle. The lighting was harsh. The baby, wrapped in a white blanket and cradled in Harry's arms, never moved. His face was partially obscured. Royal fans who had eagerly awaited a warm family portrait were left confused. The image felt cold. And Meghan? She stood beside Harry, smiling, but detached. Her body posture was distant. Her hands did not reach for the child. In fact, in all official photos from that day, she never once held the baby. That singular detail did not go unnoticed. Every mother in the royal family had been photographed holding her newborn. Diana held William and Harry. Kate held George, Charlotte, and Louis. Even Sarah Ferguson held Beatrice and Eugenie after birth. But Meghan? Never. Why? Some speculated it was due to recovery complications. Others assumed it was symbolic, perhaps allowing Harry to take the spotlight. But when viewed through the lens of the surrogate's claims, the reason becomes more sinister. If the baby was a doll during that appearance, Meghan could not hold him, because the illusion would break under close scrutiny. The pregnancy timeline, once a triumph of modern royal media, has become its undoing. The more you study it, the more it collapses under its own inconsistencies. Dates that don't align. Bumps that defy physics. media that was told not to look too closely, a hospital that was never named, a baby never held, and a mother whose appearance seemed to change not in step with biology, but in response to scrutiny. The timeline doesn't tell a story of life. It tells a story of concealment. Because if Meghan's pregnancy was a carefully managed performance, then the doll was the co-star. And what we thought was a joyous royal chapter may have been an elaborately directed act. At first glance, it seemed preposterous. The idea that the British royal family, a centuries-old institution known for ceremony, protocol, and tradition, could become embroiled in a conspiracy involving a silicone doll felt like the plot of a political satire or a dark comedy film. And yet, the more one examines the growing web of testimony, visual evidence, and first-hand accounts, the less outlandish the claim appears. A surrogate had come forward. A timeline filled with inconsistencies had already cast out. And now, all eyes turned to the heart of the allegation that shocked even seasoned royal analysts. Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, had used a lifelike reborn doll in multiple public appearances instead of presenting her real son to the world. To understand the gravity of this claim, one must first understand what a reborn doll is, and how incredibly lifelike these creations have become in recent years. Reborn dolls are not the plastic, dead-eyed playthings of a toy store. These are intricately handcrafted silicone infants, sculpted with near-obsessive attention to detail. Each wrinkle, vein, blemish, and expression is rendered with such realism that even trained eyes sometimes fail to distinguish them from actual newborns in photographs. Some even come with mechanisms that simulate breathing and heartbeat movements. These dolls can cost anywhere between $2,000 and $15,000 depending on the materials, detail, and functionality. Their primary clientele includes grieving parents, collectors, film studios, and in rare, highly confidential cases, powerful individuals seeking a substitute for a real child under specific circumstances. Sources inside the elite, hyperrealism doll industry confirm that some reborn artists have signed non-disclosure agreements to craft dolls for public figures who could not be seen holding a real infant due to medical, legal, or contractual limitations. In the case of the Sussexes, speculation intensified following Meghan and Harry's first post-birth appearance at Windsor Castle. The images from that day were jarring to those who scrutinized the baby in Harry's arms. At no point in the footage did the infant move, not even a twitch of the fingers or a gentle shift of the head. The mouth was firmly shut, the face frozen in a peaceful expression, the body completely limp. When zoomed in and slowed down, analysts noted a peculiar texture on the baby's forehead, unlike human skin, more akin to silicone under studio lighting. But it was not only body language that raised eyebrows. Multiple visual experts weighed in, including film prop specialists and special effects artists who had worked on major Hollywood productions. One, who remained anonymous for fear of legal action, stated, "That's not a living baby. That's a high-grade silicone doll. I'd bet my career on it. The positioning, the rigidity, the way the light reflects off the surface, it's all textbook. It even has that slight sheen you see with medical-grade silicone." The suspicion deepened further with Meghan's posture. In every official image from that momentous photo op, Meghan never physically touched the baby. She stood beside Harry, arms at her side, smiling but never reaching. Body language experts, including psychologists from Oxford and Cambridge, analyzed the footage. "This is highly irregular," said Dr. Tamsin Weller, a nonverbal behavior analyst. "New mothers, especially just days postpartum, exhibit protective body language. They reach for their child. They lean in. They monitor and adjust instinctively." Meghan's behavior was detached. She was performing, not mothering. The doll theory took on another layer when a known reborn artist, whose clientele includes high-profile individuals, was shown a series of royal baby photos by a freelance investigator. The artist, initially skeptical, grew quiet. After several moments, she simply said, "That looks like one of our own. I won't say more." What made the claim more credible was the report that the alleged doll had been custom-ordered from a reborn sculptor based in Los Angeles, who specializes in ultra-realistic, one-of-one commissions. These dolls are not mass-produced. They are designed to mirror the physical characteristics of a baby described or sketched by the client, often based on genetic expectations. These commissions come with clauses for confidentiality, as many clients request them for deeply personal, often painful reasons. One shipment log obtained by investigators showed a velvet-lined box, heavily insured, sent under a coded label to an intermediary firm linked to royal procurement services. The Cinder? A boutique Los Angeles workshop known for reborn sculptures. The timing of the shipment matched precisely with the days leading up to the May 2019 Windsor photo session. Inside sources claim the doll was delivered via private courier and received by a palace staff member with royal clearance. The package was never scanned through traditional customs, thanks to diplomatic cargo privileges afforded to members of the royal household. This detail alone, according to whistleblowers, points to a deliberate effort to conceal the contents from standard inspection. Further scrutiny landed on the photographs taken in South Africa later that year during the Sussex's visit to Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Baby Archie was presented to the world in a brief, controlled moment. Cameras clicked, Meghan smiled, and Harry laughed. But something about the infant again drew attention. His body was unnaturally still. His expression never changed, despite the chaos around him. In high-resolution frames, his skin looked waxy under the sun. Some claimed it was just lighting. Others weren't so sure. Critics of the reborn doll theory often point out that real children have been seen since then, especially in footage released years later. However, timeline investigators argue that many of these later appearances are after the point when the surrogate claims the real baby was introduced into private life, away from the cameras. The allegation is not that Archie never existed, but that he was hidden, while the public was shown a fabricated image in his place. For example, Christmas cards and occasional video cameos showed an aging child resembling both parents. These appearances, however, lacked continuity. The child's height, skin tone, and facial features seemed to vary. Some analysts believe stock footage and look-alike children were used in highly curated presentations to maintain the illusion until the media pressure cooled. It is also telling that the Sussexes refused to allow the press access to Archie during key milestones. His christening, unlike the ceremonies of other royal children, was entirely closed off. No media presence. No public witness. The official photo was taken indoors, under tightly controlled conditions. Again, Meghan did not hold the child. Then came the bombshell from the surrogate, that she had been told the doll would be used only temporarily, to allow the couple to stage certain photo appearances without involving the real baby. But she later discovered that the doll was featured in press materials, global broadcasts, and historic photo archives. That wasn't the deal, she claimed. They promised discretion, not deception. The psychological implications of such a decision are staggering. If true, it suggests a conscious plan to present a false image of parenthood, leveraging the global goodwill of a royal birth to gain media favor, emotional sympathy, and brand influence. Meghan and Harry's transition away from royal duties was, in part, justified by a desire to protect their child. But if that child was not publicly present, was the narrative simply a shield for something far more calculated? It raises another uncomfortable question. Why would someone do this? The answer may lie in brand building, as many experts now believe. The Sussexes were building a new identity, not just within the monarchy, but beyond it. From Netflix deals to the Archwell Foundation, their image as young, modern parents was central to their rebranding. Baby Archie was a symbol, a tool to emotionally anchor their claim to public empathy. Using a reborn doll, if true, allowed them to manufacture that symbol while avoiding the complications of real infant exposure. Even more haunting is the possibility that the deception went unchallenged because no one wanted to be the first to ask. The British press, the American entertainment media, the royal family, they all had stakes in the illusion. Challenging the narrative meant stepping into a minefield of backlash, accusation, and reputational risk. Silence, for many, was safer. But now, with mounting visual evidence, shipment logs, eyewitness accounts, and the surrogate's sworn testimony, the theory no longer lives in the realm of internet fantasy. It stands as a legitimate question of public interest. Did the Duchess of Sussex use a prop to deceive the world during one of the most celebrated royal events in modern history? And if so, what else about the Sussex story has been staged? When it comes to uncovering the truth behind any high-stakes deception, there is a guiding principle followed by investigators, journalists, and whistleblowers alike. Follow the money. Paper trails do not lie, even when people do. And in the case of Meghan Markle's alleged use of a reborn doll in place of a real baby, the financial trail that begins with anonymous wire transfers and ends with veiled threats and sealed legal documents may be the most damning evidence of all. It begins with the surrogate's contract, an unusually complex legal agreement allegedly prepared by an international law firm with ties to both American entertainment figures and European dignitaries. This contract was not merely a standard surrogacy arrangement. It included clauses that resembled those found in high-level intelligence agreements, indemnity for reputational harm, blanket confidentiality that extended indefinitely, and, most notably, a built-in financial incentive structure tied to post-birth silence. The surrogate claimed she received a lump sum up front, followed by a second, larger payment upon successful delivery. But the contract also included smaller, recurring monthly payments over the course of 2 years on the condition that she never engaged in communication with press, legal teams, or any third parties without prior written approval. These payments were made through a shell company registered in the Cayman Islands, according to transaction records reviewed by independent legal experts. More than $1.2 million in total compensation was documented, a figure that vastly exceeds standard surrogacy costs. But the money didn't just buy her womb, it bought her silence. It bought time. It bought the illusion of an uncomplicated birth narrative. But eventually, that silence became too heavy to bear, and she broke it. And once she did, other financial anomalies began to surface. Several former palace aides, speaking under the condition of anonymity, reported an unusual budget item listed vaguely as royal image and media reinforcement. The line item appeared in late 2018 and ballooned significantly through mid-2019. Insiders believe these funds were funneled into hush agreements and private reimbursements for third-party services related to staging and concealing the true nature of Archie's public image. One palace staffer revealed that the Duchess's personal office authorized off-the-books reimbursements through a charity-linked trust account. This allowed significant sums to be allocated without direct oversight from the sovereign grant or traditional royal budget committees. The staffer noted that no one dared ask questions. "You were either loyal or you were out," he said. What's more, leaked emails obtained through encrypted correspondence point to financial arrangements with high-end photo retouching firms and private security teams, some of which specialized in event management for ultra-private clientele. One exchange between a public relations manager and a hired consultant read, "We need to ensure zero risk of exposure. If that means offloading cash by hand, so be it." That message was dated just days before the first public appearance of Meghan and Harry with baby Archie at Windsor Castle. Perhaps most troubling is the testimony of a senior security contractor who claims to have been present at a closed-door planning session 2 weeks before the May 2019 photo op. The meeting, allegedly held at a private estate, included discussion of logistics related to infant transport protocol. According to the contractor, the conversation didn't revolve around security threats or scheduling. It revolved around how to properly handle the doll being used in photos. They were treating it like it was real, he recalled. There were specific instructions on how to cradle the head, how long to allow photographers to shoot, and how far the public was allowed to stand. When he questioned the need for such specificity, a handler reportedly told him, "We're crafting an image here. It has to be flawless." This obsession with controlling the image went far beyond typical royal protocol. From a financial standpoint, it included licensing deals, copyright agreements on the photos taken, and strict non-disclosure agreements signed by every member of the production team, from stylists to lighting technicians. Each document included clauses that threatened irreparable harm if breached, with penalties ranging from financial ruin to criminal prosecution. Several of those NDAs have now been leaked in part, thanks to a legal team representing a media group suing for access to unreleased footage of the Windsor event. These documents, while heavily redacted, confirmed that participants were barred from discussing the identity of the child, the method of transportation, and even the origin of the baby's clothing. If the child was a doll, as the surrogate and others now claim, these restrictions make chilling sense. The financial reach of this operation becomes clearer when viewed in its totality: disguised funds routed through trust accounts, overseas shell firms, cash payments delivered through private couriers, and photo licensing structured to protect not the child's identity, but the illusion of the child itself. But where things become even darker is in the area of coercion. Several individuals tied to this operation have reported being threatened, legally and personally, when they began asking too many questions. One junior photographer involved in the post-processing of Archie's official photos claimed that a man in a suit arrived at his home one evening with a message: "This is not your story to tell. If you value your job, you'll forget what you think you saw." Another royal aide who raised questions about the sudden appearance of a large, unmarked box in a royal vehicle, later believed to be the transportation case for the doll, found herself transferred to another department within 48 hours. It was like being disappeared, she later said. One moment you're part of the team, the next, you're being told you're no longer needed. But keep your mouth shut. There's also the case of the charity whistleblower, an employee within a children's welfare nonprofit tied to the Archwell Foundation. This individual reported an unusual grant of £50,000 made to a wellness research firm, with no web presence and no history of public service. The payment, he believes, was a front for something else entirely, possibly a payoff to an involved party. After submitting a report to senior foundation executives, the employee was terminated within days, allegedly for violating internal protocol. Investigative financial auditors reviewing the Archwell Foundation's filings noted a pattern of vague expense labeling, unusually high consulting fees, and grants awarded to entities that could not be properly vetted. One of the firms paid nearly $100,000 for child image rights strategy, had no physical office, no working website, and no social media footprint. When pressed, Archwell's legal team claimed these were part of sensitive rebranding operations not open to public disclosure. Critics argue that such obfuscation is exactly how elaborate deceptions are maintained. Money flows through enough intermediaries that by the time it reaches its destination, no one remembers the original purpose. That kind of system works perfectly for those with the wealth, power, and global stature to avoid scrutiny until, of course, someone speaks. And speak they have. The surrogate, the security contractor, the retoucher, the charity employee. Even a former palace clerk who handled internal budget reconciliations has come forward, saying, "You don't just lose £500,000 in discretionary travel funds without a reason." And there was no travel. All of this raises a burning question. Who paid for it all? Was it Meghan and Harry themselves, using personal funds from Netflix, Spotify, and their other ventures? Was it a combination of private donations and foundation capital? Or, most alarmingly, were public funds indirectly used to construct and maintain the lie? If taxpayer money, even in part, was allocated to supporting false public appearances, the implications are vast. It would constitute not only a breach of trust but a potential violation of the sovereign funding structure. Parliamentary scrutiny could be triggered. The monarchy's reputation, already strained, could suffer irreversible damage. And for the Sussexes, any confirmed misuse of funds might not just be a PR disaster, but a legal one. At the heart of this is the age-old principle: if you want to know the truth, follow the money. And in this case, the trail leads not to the cradle of a royal infant, but to velvet-lined boxes, confidential contracts, and the echo of doors slammed shut to protect a fabricated fairy tale. The next section will open the palace gates a little wider. Those who worked inside, the royal staff, aides, and handlers, have begun to talk. What they reveal about the cover-up from within will challenge everything we've ever believed about royal loyalty, silence, and complicity. The royal family, as seen by the public, is a fortress of poise, polish, and precision. Every word is measured, every gesture choreographed, every silence deliberate. But behind the gilded gates of Buckingham Palace and the winding halls of Windsor Castle, where secrets are guarded more ruthlessly than state documents, a different kind of reality exists. One filled with hushed voices, cautious glances, and a strict code of loyalty enforced by fear. It is within this clandestine world that the truth about baby Archie's birth, or the lack thereof, began to unravel, not through loud proclamations, but through the hesitant testimonies of the very people closest to the source. The first voice to break rank came not from a whistleblower hotline, nor from a salacious tabloid leak. It emerged in the form of a cryptic resignation letter from a mid-ranking palace aide, a woman who had served within the Sussex household for just under a year. Her departure initially attracted little media attention, buried beneath headlines of royal tours and charity engagements. But those who read her letter closely noticed an odd phrasing. "I can no longer continue to participate in a narrative that misaligns with my conscience and the standards of royal transparency I believe this institution upheld." That phrase, "misaligns with my conscience," sparked curiosity among internal staff and discreet royal correspondents. Some took it as a vague protest against Meghan and Harry's increasing tension with the crown. But a few insiders understood what it really meant. This was not about office politics. It was about a secret that was growing too heavy to carry. Following her resignation, a domino effect began. Over the next 6 months, a small but significant number of staff either resigned or requested transfers away from the Sussex household. Among them were a nanny, a press coordinator, and 2 long-serving security personnel. Officially, their departures were amicable. But unofficially, many of them spoke quietly to one another, and eventually, to outside parties, always cloaked in anonymity, about their unease surrounding Archie's early days. A former royal protection officer, speaking to a London investigative journalist under the agreement of anonymity, provided the first hint of what had gone on. According to him, the birth plan had been intentionally shielded from the usual chain of command. Typically, we'd be informed well in advance of any maternity movement. Security details, route planning, medical escorts. But with Meghan, none of that happened. Everything was on a need-to-know basis, and apparently, most of us didn't need to know. He recounted an unusual night in late April 2019 when a vehicle under Sussex authorization left Frogmore Cottage under armed guard, but did not go to a hospital. It went to a remote private estate near Oxford. The location had previously been used for discreet royal retreats, but on this occasion, there was no public record of its use. The car returned hours later, empty. The officer found this curious. But what truly raised his suspicions was the briefing he received the following day. You didn't see anything. You don't speak about it. You don't question it. This kind of language, he claimed, was not standard. Even in sensitive operations, transparency among senior protection staff was critical. That's when I knew something wasn't right. A palace nanny, who had been employed to assist the Sussex family post-delivery, also shared a troubling memory. She had been hired with the expectation of caring for a newborn. But from the very start, something felt wrong. There was no baby routine. No cries at night. No feeding instructions. I was told Archie would not be in my care directly, but instead, I was to help manage supplies and schedule logistics. It made no sense. Even more unsettling, she reported that the nursery she was assigned to never looked lived in. The cot was pristine. The blankets folded. There was no baby scent, no soiled laundry. I've worked with dozens of families. You know when a baby's in the room, even if you can't see them. But in that house, it was as if the baby existed only on paper. She lasted 3 weeks before quietly resigning, citing misalignment of duties. That phrase now appears in multiple resignation letters filed during that same period, an unusual cluster that HR flagged, but ultimately ignored. A communications officer from the Sussex press team revealed even more. She described an atmosphere of tension and paranoia when handling media inquiries about the baby. We were explicitly told not to confirm any details about the birth, not the time, the place, the medical team, nothing. Our standard replies were carefully worded. We were to refer to the baby as believed to have been born in the early hours of May 6th and avoid any mention of medical oversight. She also recalled the chaos surrounding the photo op at Windsor Castle. I've never seen so many handlers, stylists, and security agents involved in such a short photo session. It felt more like a film set than a royal event. Every angle was mapped out. Meghan's positioning, the lighting, even the exact distance Harry was supposed to stand from her while holding the baby. Everything had to be perfect. But the most alarming detail came in the form of an unusual request from Meghan's private assistant. According to the communications officer, the assistant asked for final approval of all images before the palace press office had even reviewed them. This was unprecedented. Normally, the photos go through our office first, then to the palace archivist, and then to the public. But in this case, we were cut out of the chain. When the photos were finally released, several staff members noticed that Meghan never touched the child. It wasn't just that she didn't hold him. It was the way she stood, detached, careful, like she couldn't interact physically. That's when the whispers started. Someone asked half-jokingly, "Is that baby even real?" And nobody laughed. Among palace cleaners and junior staff, rumors began to spread. Some joked about the ghost nursery. Others whispered about the velvet box that had been delivered weeks earlier, about the strange instructions not to open it under any circumstances, even during security sweeps. A senior housekeeper claimed she found a handwritten note taped to the nursery door that read, "No entry without direct approval." She had never seen such a note before, not even in the Queen's quarters. Meanwhile, the IT department noticed digital restrictions on certain security cameras in and around Frogmore Cottage. Access logs showed that the video archives for the week of Archie's birth were locked under a private passcode, not the standard security code used by senior staff. This was later justified as a cybersecurity protocol, but technicians were never able to review that footage. One technician confided to a colleague, "They didn't want us to see who came and went during those days." A private chef assigned to the household recalled preparing special postpartum recovery meals in early May, but they were never touched. We were told to prepare everything from scratch. Nutrient-rich broths, anti-inflammatory dishes. But after 4 days, I asked if the meals should be scaled back. The assistant just said, they're not needed. But keep making them for appearances. The accumulation of oddities, unopened meals, empty nurseries, silenced cameras, and overmanaged photos started to form a collective truth among the lower and mid-level staff. Something was deeply wrong. And when staffers began quietly comparing notes, they realized they had all been instructed to stick to their respective duties, ask no questions, and avoid eye contact with the family during unscheduled moments. By the fall of 2019, several of these staffers had begun seeking legal advice. One reached out to an NGO focused on labor ethics in high-security environments. Another attempted to leak information to a European journalist, but the story was pulled before publication. One reporter later admitted that the source's information was too radioactive to touch. What made the silence so effective, however, was the culture inside the palace itself. Loyalty is not a suggestion. It is expected, demanded, and enforced through centuries of tradition and rigid hierarchy. Speaking out against a royal, especially against an heir-adjacent couple like the Sussexes, could be career-ending, if not personally dangerous. NDAs are standard. So are internal threat assessments for staff volatility. And then there's the human element. These employees were not just workers, they were believers. They took pride in serving the monarchy. To suggest that a duchess might have faked her pregnancy was, to many, unthinkable, disloyal, borderline treasonous. For a while, that sense of duty was enough to keep their lips sealed. But times are changing. The royal institution has weathered immense scrutiny in recent years, from Prince Andrew's scandals to Prince Harry's own public allegations against his family. The idea that something might be rotten in the kingdom no longer shocks the public. And for many former staffers, this shift in perception has given them the courage to come forward. Today, more than a dozen former palace employees have quietly provided testimony to an independent inquiry assembled by a coalition of media watchdogs, legal experts, and whistleblower protection agencies. Their stories vary in detail, but the central theme is consistent. A veil of secrecy surrounded the birth and early life of baby Archie. One thickened by control, fear, and relentless image management. A veil that many now believe concealed something more than privacy, a carefully constructed fiction. As more voices join the growing chorus of dissent, the walls once thought impenetrable are beginning to echo with doubt. And the truth, long buried beneath royal protocol and media deference, is inching its way into the light. In the next section, we shift focus to the public arena. How did these staged moments unfold before the world's eyes, and why did so few notice? Were we all complicit in the illusion? From the moment the public was told that Meghan Markle had delivered Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor, every subsequent appearance was met with global fascination. The anticipation was palpable. A royal baby, born of one of the most famous couples on Earth, was not just a family matter. It was a global media event. Cameras were poised, crowds gathered, and millions of eyes across continents tuned in. But what those eyes may have witnessed, now under renewed scrutiny, is not the spontaneous joy of a young family, but a meticulously planned illusion, staged for optics, reinforced by choreography, and possibly driven by a much larger cover-up. The first red flag came just days after Archie's birth, when Meghan and Harry made their highly anticipated public debut as new parents inside Windsor Castle. This appearance, which should have been a jubilant and organic moment, instead felt cold, unnatural, and oddly distant. The setting, indoors, dimly lit, controlled, was a stark contrast to traditional royal baby unveilings. Gone were the hospital steps, the crowds of journalists, the proud display of motherhood that had characterized the births of William and Kate's children. In place of authenticity, the world saw a well-dressed couple standing stiffly in a grand hallway, with Harry holding a baby who, in hindsight, appeared more like a doll than a newborn. In that brief appearance, Meghan stood beside her husband with her hands clasped, never once reaching out to touch the baby. This, to many, was the moment the illusion began to crack. Experts in human behavior and body language later analyzed the footage, pointing out Meghan's unusually formal posture, her lack of maternal instinct in the moment, and most critically, the static, non-responsive nature of the child. The baby didn't squirm. It didn't blink. It didn't flinch at the sudden burst of camera flashes. And when Harry shifted the bundle slightly, the infant's body moved as one stiff unit, a movement that experts say is highly uncharacteristic of any healthy newborn. For weeks, questions began to quietly swirl online. Was the baby real? Why was there no motion? Why did Meghan never hold the child, even for a moment? Then came the christening. Scheduled for July 6, 2019, 2 months after Archie's alleged birth, it was conducted in private, behind the walls of Windsor Castle, with only a select few attendees and no access to the press. The couple released 2 photographs, one with the extended family and another more artistic, sepia-toned image of Meghan cradling the baby. But again, something felt off. In the family photo, the child's face was partially obscured. His body position was ambiguous. Critics pointed out that the baby's proportions seemed unusual, too large for a 2-month-old, yet lacking the muscle tone and posture of a living infant. A zoomed-in analysis by an independent digital artist revealed that the baby's head had a flat texture under light exposure, a sign that suggested silicone rather than skin. The second image, which showed Meghan holding the child, was tightly framed and stylized in such a way that details were deliberately muted. Lighting was soft and shadow-heavy, likely to obscure fine textures. Meghan's hand supported the child's head, but again, the body appeared unnaturally still. One visual effects expert who reviewed the photo for a media analysis firm stated, "This image is too perfect. The baby's features lack the minor imperfections that all infants have: creased skin, blotches, tiny movements. This isn't a natural moment. It's a composition." In the months that followed, the couple traveled to South Africa, bringing baby Archie along for an official royal visit. It was in Cape Town that the world was treated to the now famous image of Meghan and Harry holding their son alongside Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Here, finally, was a bright, joyful public appearance. The child was more developed, smiling, animated. Yet even this moment has come under question. Skeptics noted that the child shown in South Africa bore subtle but noticeable differences from the baby presented at Windsor. Side-by-side comparisons point to variations in ear shape, skin tone, and facial symmetry. Was this the real Archie? If so, where had he been for the first 5 months of his life? If not, had a look-alike child, perhaps a stand-in from a trusted family or staff member, been presented for this single appearance? Adding to the confusion was the manner in which the child was presented. Again, Meghan did not hold the baby. Harry carried him into the venue, cradling him for photographs. Once seated, Archie remained mostly stationary in his father's lap. The body positioning was rigid, and at one point, a peculiar moment occurred. Harry reached under the baby's arm as if to adjust something, not a blanket, not clothing, but something internal, like a strap. The video clip was replayed and analyzed across social platforms, with several users speculating that the movement resembled someone adjusting a harness or support mechanism typically found on hyperrealistic dolls. And then, Archie vanished from public view once more. Months passed with no images, no video clips, no public appearances. The press was told that Meghan and Harry were prioritizing their son's privacy. They had moved to Canada and then to California. The narrative was clear. Archie was being raised outside the media spotlight. But even this privacy, admirable on the surface, began to raise questions. Why was there no birthday photo on his first birthday? Why no candid paparazzi shots, no chance sightings in parks, no leaked snapshots from nannies or neighbors? For a child born into one of the most publicly documented families on Earth, Archie was conspicuously absent. Then came the release of their Netflix documentary, part of a lucrative multi-million-dollar deal. The promotional materials promised rare glimpses into the Sussex family's private life, including their journey as new parents. And yet, the footage shown was either archival, heavily edited, or suspiciously vague. Shots of baby toys, blurred images of an infant crawling, low-lit footage of a child's silhouette against a window, none of it definitive, none of it conclusive. One particular scene raised red flags among digital analysts. Meghan is seen kissing a child's head while seated outdoors, but the camera never shows the child's face. The sequence cuts rapidly, never lingering long enough to confirm whether the child is Archie or a stand-in. According to a professional editor who reviewed the footage, it's classic sleight of hand. Emotional music, suggestive imagery, fast cuts. It creates the feeling of authenticity without actually showing anything authentic. That same documentary, curiously, avoids any reference to Archie's birth. There is no hospital footage, no behind-the-scenes moments, no raw footage from those early days. In a world where celebrities regularly document their pregnancies and share intimate delivery stories, this absence was deafening. As time passed, the inconsistencies only grew. Christmas cards sent by the Sussexes showed a toddler, often rendered in stylized artwork or digital illustrations. One card in particular, which went viral online, was accused of being photoshopped. Analysts dissected the image, pointing out shadows that didn't align, duplicated pixels, and signs of artificial blending. The image, which showed Harry, Meghan, and a smiling Archie, was never backed by raw original files. When asked for confirmation, their spokesperson declined to comment. But the question remains, how did the public not see this sooner? Why did so many simply accept these curated moments without scrutiny? The answer lies in emotional investment. Meghan and Harry crafted a narrative that was more than just a royal story, it was a cultural movement. They positioned themselves as victims of an archaic system, as trailblazers stepping out of tradition to protect their love and their child. The world wanted to believe them. They needed to believe in something that felt modern, human, relatable. And in that desire, the details, no matter how odd, were dismissed. Psychologists refer to this as confirmation bias. When people are emotionally attached to an outcome, they interpret ambiguous evidence in ways that confirm their beliefs. The Sussexes were not just royals, they were symbols of progress, diversity, and rebellion. Any suggestion that their public image was built on deception felt not only implausible but offensive. Critics were accused of racism, misogyny, and conspiracy-mongering. But now, with insiders speaking out, with the surrogate providing a detailed testimony, and with visual evidence mounting, the narrative is shifting. People are going back, rewatching old videos, re-examining old photos, and asking questions they were once too afraid or too enchanted to ask. The illusion, carefully staged over years, is beginning to crumble. In the next section, we dig deeper into the emotional undercurrent that may have driven this alleged deception. How do decades of royal rumors about Prince Harry's own lineage tie into the desperate need to establish a new bloodline? Could unresolved trauma have played a role in the orchestration of such an elaborate lie?